What is the best piece of advice you've ever gotten on the water?
Patience.
What is one piece of gear or a system that every boat owner should know inside and out, according to you?
The anchoring system, how to deploy it and the proper scope and the proper type of anchor for the seafloor.
What is your best advice to cruising couples who are preparing for a journey like the Great Loop?
Learn as much as you can about what you're interested in and realize that we all have different strengths to bring to the table.
Can you share with us how many nautical miles you have spent underway together?
No, we
No,
have no idea.
I have to go back into our logbooks, and even that doesn't cover as much as no.
The answer is no. I love it. Hello and welcome back to Full Displacement, the podcast by Current Yachts. I am delighted to have two friends of mine today, Captain Chris and Alyse, whom I met many, many years ago. It was during one of those Trollfest events for cruisers, boat owners, or boat buyers that are exploring the long-distance cruising lifestyle. And so I asked Chris and Alyse to join the podcast today to talk about their experience as instructors, as fellow liveaboards, to share their knowledge with us and our listeners. So today we're going to talk about you bought the boat. Now what? What are some of the most commonly asked questions that boat owners or boat buyers come to Chris and Alyse for? So before we get started, hello, Amanda. Welcome back to the program.
Hi, Marilyn. Thanks for having me today and joining us, guys. We appreciate you being here.
Chris, Alyse, welcome to the show. How are you?
Very
Great.
well. Hello from Vero Beach.
Love to have you here, Chris. It's been so long, and you guys have lived that dream, and you've been Liveaboard since 1995. I got that from the website. Is that still correct?
Yep.
You're like trusted, done it. You walk the talk, and people now look up to you, and you're a huge wealth of knowledge, which we're very grateful to have you here today. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got to what you're doing now and have been doing for decades.
It's a strange beginning. We left our careers in the year 2000 and went on a one-year boat ride. Living in New Orleans, we figured we didn't have kids. Why wait till 65? So we took a leave of absence and went on a one-year boat ride, leaving in May. And then around New Year's, we were in Key West, and we decided this is too good. We don't need to go back. So we cruised some more, working out of our savings account. And then we figured we needed money. So we started doing odd jobs, and we made an LLC and were insured as a service company, Captain Chris Yacht Services. And we were doing a lot of service work, simple service work. And then we were approached how we can teach people better docking skills. So we started doing captain work, training people how to operate their new boat or their new to them boat. And then some major manufacturers, Beneteau was one, Katie Krogan is another, at the factory level hired us to train their new clients that just bought their boats. So we figured that being a captain is a lot cleaner, easier than crawling around on our hands and knees in the bilge. So we morphed into training.
But we trained them how to do some of that work too. So that was kind of nice for them because some of it is pretty easy. It's not difficult. And if you do the maintenance in advance, the basic preventive maintenance, then you can keep like an apple a day keeps the doctor away kind of thing. So we figured that we were pretty comfortable with what worked for us and what kept us cruising for so long that we were able to share that with others.
One more question. I wanted to ask, how did you get into boating in the first place? Were you an adult already? Did you fall into it as a kid? Can you share with us?
Completely different
stories.
ways.
Two
Go
different
ahead. I want to hear them both.
Okay. I was what we all know as a boat rider. I was the baby of the family. My parents had a boat up at the Jersey Shore, and it was a trailer boat to start with. And then we got a little bit bigger with what we called a cabin cruiser, a big, what was it, a 24-footer, nothing huge, but big enough. And I still, being the baby, was always told, sit with your life jacket on and don't move. And my two older siblings were able to do it all. So when I came to Louisiana and met Chris, I loved boating. I enjoyed it, but I really didn't know a whole lot about the hands-on part of it. And I wanted to learn because it's a lot more fun. And what I learned as time went on, we wanted a bigger boat and a bigger boat and a bigger boat. And then that's how we ended up living aboard, even while we were still in our corporate jobs in New Orleans. And we would take the boat out every week, leave the dock at least once a week, sometimes more. And when we had 3-day vacations, we would go someplace off the Mississippi Gulf Coast, et cetera, et cetera. And I finally said, you know what? I want to learn to drive the boat. I don't want to be the deckhand all the time. And what I really learned is that it's easier driving the boat than it is handling all those lines and dealing with the anchor and all that sort of stuff. So, it's one of those things where what you don't know, sometimes you're a little afraid of. And once you learn it, you realize, and he was okay with it. But, some people, it's difficult getting their hands pried from that wheel. They don't want to give up the driving. It's a fear thing too for them because they don't really know how to handle lines. They don't really know how to run up and down the decks and fend off with fenders and all that sort of stuff. But it ended up being a really fun thing for me. And he said, but first, before you learn to drive the boat, you have to learn the basic things like checking fluids. So I said, okay, I can learn how to do that. I mean, I've been handing him tools for years. I could definitely be down to doing it. And when I learned that, he said, okay, great. Now we're going to dock and we're going to do fine with that. One day I said, I'm taking it out without you. And he said, really? Because this is where we lived. Everything we owned was on this boat.
And what was the boat again then?
This was a 44. It was a Gulf Star trawler, full displacement, twin engines, no thrusters. Okay. And he said, who are you going to use for your deckhand? And I said, all the women in this marina have volunteered to be my deckhand. So I had about 8 ladies with me and we went out and had a lovely day on Lake Pontchartrain in New Orleans. And from then on, it was like, okay, I felt really comfortable and it was no longer what am I going to do if something happens to him? I was very comfortable driving the boat and eventually ended up getting my captain's license as well.
So when you guys first started out, you said you took a year-long trip. Was that on the Gulf Star or was it a different boat at that?
Yes, that was on the Gulf Star.
And you hinted to maybe starting with something smaller and then working your way up and working your way up. What did you start with?
Well, as owning a boat, well, my history is a little bit different. I grew up working on farm in the summer, and then I figured I'd go work on a shrimp boat, get paid more money. And then when you don't catch shrimp, you don't get paid. So then I went into the oil field, so I drove crew boats out to the oil rigs. And in all 3 of those jobs, if your machines don't work, you don't get paid. So that's where I figured out that I need to know how to make these things keep going. So to answer your first question about what was the boat that we started out with, built as a married couple, we built a 14-foot fiberglass skiff, and then a bigger 14-foot aluminum skiff. And then one day we ended up with the 34-foot Down East cruiser built up in East Booth Bay, Maine.
Single engine,
no bow thruster. And then we figured we're living in New Orleans. We only live 5 miles away from the marina. And we figured we're out here 4 days a week and we have to go home to cut the grass. So why don't we buy a bigger boat and get rid of the house?
But even before we sold that boat and traded up, we would take 10-day, 14-day trips on that. And the hardest part about it is that it was originally a lobster boat that had been converted to something that was pleasure. So the shower was on the aft deck.
You had to shower in your swimsuit.
It was not a really good place to live on the boat and be comfortable. And today, 34-foot boats have been designed for pleasure. And you can have a fully enclosed, comfortable head and 2 staterooms, and something that size. So it was a little different, a little rougher than what today's 34-foot boats are. But we still loved it. And that was the whole thing, is that it was fun, it was enjoyable. And what we learned very quickly is if it wasn't fun, why are we doing it? So you had to step back and think about, what did you do? Why did you go? Most of the time, that when it wasn't fun, it was because we had a schedule and you were
Yes.
pushing to go when the weather was not great or the boat wasn't in the best condition or something like that. That they always say the schedule is the most dangerous thing to have on a boat. And then that's the truth. It needs to stay fun. It needs to stay pleasurable. And when it stops, you just step back a little bit and say, what did we do differently? It started out so fun. So what did we do differently?
And we had 2 dogs.
Oh, yeah.
We had
The
a
whole time.
Chesapeake Retriever and a Labrador Retriever. And as time went on, we had a Golden Doodle, and then we had 2 Golden Doodles. And now we've got a rescue guy named Fergus. So we've always had dogs on the boats. And it's a little extra work, but that's your best friend. He's got to go on the boat.
And that also gets you off the boat. Because even though we anchored a lot, we would dinghy into shore and we would walk the town with the dogs. And people always come up to you when you have a dog, right? Oh, look how cute, and so you meet people. We would have the dog's name on the life jacket and we'd be walking through town and somebody would say, I was told to look for Fred the dog, Not Alyse and Chris, but Fred the dog.
That's
So-
funny.
Yeah.
As you cruise, you meet so many different people, and it's so difficult. Now, we're talking about before internet, before digital cell phones.
That we started, yeah.
So you became known as Fred's parents, or you became known as Sandy Hook, the
The
name
name
of our boat. So now we've got cell phones, we've got MMSI, we've got boat cards. So anybody out there listening, you want to have a boat card made for your boat with your name and your cell number, maybe even your email. So don't use your business card because you don't want people knowing that you're a brain surgeon or a lawyer. You're just Chris and Alyse on Sandy Hook.
Right.
Or a
I'm
boat captain that can
looking
come
up as
fix it
surgeon.
every time the boat breaks down, right?
That too.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how it morphed into what we do. Because people would ask questions and they would say, can you help me? Well, sure. You're always going to help another boater, right? And then we said, there's
Yeah,
a
but then you
business.
had to get paid. So
That's right.
Yes.
Well, we didn't
That
want to
was
go
the
into it, into our state.
we happen to know that Liveaboard boaters are notoriously cheap. At least, I am a fellow Liveaboard, and in the beginning, I gleaned every bit of information I could from the people that were willing to teach me.
That's
for free.
sailboaters, Amanda.
Yes, that is notoriously sailboaters too. And forgive me, I was one of those cheap sailboaters to begin with. But now I'm paying it forward and giving back because I needed that learning experience. People would come over and help me change my throttle cable, do the basics of the fuel changes and oil changes and fuel filter changes, I should say. So I really appreciate hearing a similar story from you guys and this necessity that got you out there saying, well, we love this lifestyle. We want to continue it. How can we make money doing this? And I can tell from your personalities that it was just the next step for you guys and something easy to do.
Cruisers or liveaboards are not necessarily cheap. It's just that when you pick up the phone and the guy says, well, I can be out there in 3 days. And you think, well, 3 days, I'll be 200 miles away. So do it yourself. And that's another thing we teach is DIY owner maintenance. We don't teach you how to become an engine mechanic, but we teach you how, like you said, change your fuel filters, maybe change your oil. Throttle cables takes 2 people to do that, but
Yes.
they're part changing. I use that word a lot. They're part changing. It's not scientific and it's not difficult.
And in a powerboat, part changing is a lot more elbow space than in a
Yeah.
sailboat.
Yeah. And the confidence you glean from being out there and doing that, and every time something breaks down, you get more and more confident that you'll be able to handle the situation, whatever it is, because you are able to figure out, oh, the throttle cable, or oh, this in the past. So you can open up that book and say, I can do this. I've got it. And I remember when it clicked for me too, is I don't need that mechanic to have to call him all the time. I actually can do this myself. So it's cool that you guys figured that out too. Question for you. You both hold the title of 100-ton captain. What does that title mean and how does it help you and what does it matter to the people that are hiring you?
I can make it simple or difficult. Let's tackle the technical part first.
Okay.
100 tons means gross registered tons of the vessel as assigned by the U.S. Coast Guard. The formula for deriving that is extremely complicated, so we'll skip it. So 100 tons, your boat, when you buy your boat, you'll get the certificate of documentation. People call it the COD, and it will give the gross registered tons or GRT. and it'll tell you 36 tons, 55 tons, 95 tons. So that's where we're limited to less than 100 gross registered tons. It's not an exact science, but it's kind of sort of 65 feet is the ceiling, but not really. There's 100-foot boats that are less than 100 gross tons. It's a technicality, it's a paper issue. But bigger boats that we work on are in the owner-operated category instead of professional hired crew. So we do owner-operators. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely.
And as a follow on to that, when a new owner takes possession of their new to them boat, whether it's a trawler or a motor cruiser, what do you find is the number one mistake that these people do and that you help address in the first few days of training?
I won't call it a mistake. I'll call it a huge learning curve.
You?
Because the kind of people buying the size or the price of boats that we deal with are retiring, and then they're buying their dream boat and they're buying the dream. And then when we get on the boat, the first thing we do is we teach them owner responsibilities. So we'll start from the bow with the anchor locker, and we'll do what we call a crawl through. So we'll crawl through the boat from the anchor locker, under the bilges, in the forward cabin, in the engine room, all the way to the lazarette with the rudders. We'll go back to the engine room and spend more time pointing out air conditioner water pumps, air conditioner condenser compressors, the engines, the transmissions, the shaft seals, and on and on and on and on. So we believe that it's important that a boat owner operator know what's down there. The second half is not that they know how to repair it, but they know how to recognize that a problem is coming. So let's say it's noontime today and you've got a problem, so it's not a catastrophe, but if I get to a marina or an anchorage this afternoon, I can take care of it, or get to a marina this afternoon and have a professional come out and take care of it tomorrow. So we teach owner responsibility and DIY for some of the things skill level might be.
Yeah, it's so interesting. When I first bought my boat and I learned about the acid washing of the AC unit, and I had no idea that barnacles would grow into the entire system. I knew it was a water cooled system, but I didn't think through that process. And it's like, okay, this is seawater. Barnacles are going to get in here, and in this warm environment that I live, they're going to grow in there too. And I remember the first time I got the high pressure fault on my AC, and in Florida, it's very important to have your AC when you're a liveaboard, especially at night. And I learned that it's a normal occurrence that every 6 months you're going to have to go through and acid wash the barnacles out of your AC system. These little things that most liveaboard and boat owners in general just really don't know until someone walks through and says, see this strainer right here? Yes, you're cleaning it every week, but did you know that you need to do this next step? And then creating a do-it-yourself acid wash bucket and all of those things. I mean, it's a lot of fun. But, I wanted to ask you guys, the taking delivery, you've mentioned that you help a lot of people with their new boats. People think that that means here's the keys, here you go. That's taking delivery of a boat. How would you help a client in taking delivery of a boat? You talked about going from, the bow to the stern and going through those things. What else would you do?
A lot of different things that we do, mostly because of our long experience of living aboard and cruising. And everybody asks, how many miles have you cruised? I don't have a clue. I don't know. But we ask them, so they work with the broker, they do the sea trial and survey, they review the survey. If there's any gray areas, then we can help them decide what to do about those gray areas, if they should be fixed or repaired before they take possession. And then when they do active sale and then the keys turn over to them, then if they hire us, we can go aboard the boat. And the first thing we do is the crawl through. The second thing we do is we teach them dock lines, cleat knots and spring lines, cross stern lines, bow lines. And you think, why are you starting there? Because when we come back, we got to tie the boat up. So we can't teach them after we come back, we need to teach them before we leave.
And one of the best ways for people to learn is, let's say they bought the boat in Miami and they needed to go to Charleston. We have them come aboard and do a training delivery. So that training delivery allows them every day to build on the day before. And the first day, they are truly drinking through a fire hose. They're just so much information and only some of it sticks, right? So every day, a little bit more sticks, a little bit more sticks. And of course, you can definitely learn by starting in your home port marina and going out and coming back every day. You can learn that way. But it really, if you have the opportunity to go on your delivery, wherever your boat is being purchased from and where your home port is going to be, going on that delivery and learning. There's a difference between a delivery captain and a training captain for sure. Delivery captains will get the boat there and they're really good at what they do. But most of them, and that's how we fell into the training. We had somebody say to us, "Can I go?" And I said, "It's your boat. Why couldn't you go?" And they said, "Because the last time I bought a boat, the captain told me I asked too many questions." Again, it's your boat. Many captains, and we all have different strengths. Many captains say, "I don't want to have to answer all those questions." Just like a mechanic sometimes doesn't want you breathing over their shoulder to learn. There's a certain way to learn and a certain way to teach, and different people learn different ways, and we have to figure that out too. How do you learn best? Are you do you catch the ball this way, or do you catch the ball overhead, or or are you a person that reads everything and believes everything that you read? Because you can't. It's not all accurate. Just
Right.
like internet is not accurate either. But it's something that if you can do a training delivery, you can benefit so much and learn so much. And on days where you're just overwhelmed, we're there, so it's okay. It's not like your boat's not going to move. We'll just take it a little slower with you on those days, or we'll tell you, this is a day we're not going out. This is not good for you. This is not good for your boat. The weather is not good, or there's a problem that we identified that you may not have realized if this was your first time aboard the boat. So there's a lot that building each day. That's a great way for some people to learn.
And I'd like to add to that, building each day. So you talked about going from Miami to Charleston. So you live down south. So you got bridge,
Yeah.
bridge. So you learn radio protocol. You learn
Yeah.
how to call the bridges and open the bridges.
Learn how to hold position.
Hold position, station keeping. Then when you get above Palm Beach, we don't have too many bridges after that. But then we start getting into areas with sandbars, tidal currents, tides being deep or shallow. So a training delivery is good. And because we sell ourselves as being training captains, whenever you're comfortable, as long as we're in a place that we can get a rental car or an airplane, we can step off the boat.
So it's not like you have to have us come the whole way. We can plan on doing the whole way if that's what you want, but maybe you only want us for 5 days. Maybe that's all your insurance requires. At day 3 or so, sometimes we've had people say, "Can you stay a little longer?" We will. If we can't, we'll see if we can get, like, my brother's also a captain, and we'll see if he can come up, or we maybe give them a break for a week and they stay because maybe they stopped in, I don't know, some Savannah,
Beach or
someplace
Savannah.
where it's a fun place to be for a couple of days, get a breather, and then we can come back.
And Alyse, can you speak a little bit more to your typical client? First of all, are they generally new boaters or experience? And then it sounds like you're mostly dealing with couples. Can you talk to us about who your services have been really useful for and what you're seeing a lot?
A few years ago, I would have told you it was all new boaters who had never had a boat, not even a little boat, never had a boat, and they were couples. Now it's all over the place. And it used to be, if they had a boat, this is a much bigger boat. And now sometimes it's even a smaller boat and people are still not sure. Or maybe when they had the larger boat, they paid somebody to do all the maintenance and now they want to do it themselves. So it's all over. It's all over. And it just shocked me the first time that we met loopers many, many years ago, because that's what we started out. We were going to be doing the loop, and we had been boating for years. At that point, I could dock my boat. So it was not like I was brand new at any of this. And we would meet people that never had a boat of that size if they had a boat. And now they're going to go out and do the loop. And then they plan on selling the boat when they're done. And I said, "But you're going to love it." And they looked at me like I had 6 heads and said, "Well, yes, I'm going to love it. But that's why we're doing it." But we also know that there's lots of other things we want to check off our list and do later on. So when we're done with this, we're going to sell the boat. So maybe we'll have it for a year. There were some boats that we trained people on the boat different people 4 different times because they would do the loop, sell the boat, do the loop, sell the boat, do the loop, sell the boat. And it was shocking to me because I'd only been around boaters. I'd only been around people who had boated all their life and worked their way up. Now that's not the case. People are all over the board. And that's why I say we have to learn how you learn, because everybody's not starting out at the same. And when it's a couple, sometimes we have a woman that's come and maybe 10 years ago, she lost her husband and now she's met another person that she wants to go travel with. And she has the boating experience and he may not. And so, we're starting at 2 different levels, and that's okay. We all learn differently.
And the question of insurance. A lot of insurance companies want to know your experience, your boating experience. So there's a word that we hear in the boating community called 10-foot-itis.
Yeah.
So if you've got a 20-foot boat, they'll only go up to 30 unless you hire a training captain. And some of these insurance companies might want 20 hours, 30 hours, or maybe even 50 hours of training with a licensed captain. And we provide that training and we provide that letter of competency at the end of the required time frame. So that way they can get a bigger boat.
That's great to hear. We actually have been helping a lot of people buying boats lately, and this is one of the stipulations that insurance is putting on them. So you guys are a wonderful couple and a great resource for a lot of our listeners and boat buyers here.
And Chris, the other day when I called you up to prepare this podcast recording, you had told me you just finished off your training off of FaceTime with a client, and I was really surprised by this. It sounds like your support goes beyond the, at the helm and knowing your boat type of courses and education and hands-on training you provide. So how does that come about? Is it, hey, I need to call my boat doctor, I need to call Captain Chris because I'm stuck? Tell us about that.
Well, we've got a new phrase up there, ask Captain Chris, and we can talk on the telephone if you can describe it well enough, or if you've got an iProduct, an iPhone or an iPad, I like to do FaceTime more so than Zoom because Zoom requires Wi-Fi, and usually when the boat's in a marina way out at the end of the dock, the Wi-Fi doesn't do that well. Or if you got people in marina watching movies, the bandwidth gets crowded. So we do FaceTime. And the only thing that I ask is when you're holding up your camera or your phone, try to hold it steady so I can see better.
Yeah.
But we, last time when I was speaking with you, I was working with a fella up in Beaufort, North Carolina, or is it Beaufort, North Carolina? Anyway,
Beaufort, North Carolina.
He had bought a boat last summer. And as soon as he bought it, it went into winter storage. Now he's getting ready to splash the boat and he's forgotten everything. So we're going back and reviewing everything with his iPhone. And we'll just go around through the engine room. What's that? What's it do? What's the owner maintenance? What's that? What's that? What's that? And like Amanda, you talked about the strainer for the air conditioner and how to clean the strainer. Depending upon where you are in warmer weather, like us in Vero Beach or you further down south, your strainer probably needs cleaning once a week. That's
Absolutely.
about right?
Once a week, every Sunday.
Yeah. So things like that. And then we'll coach them through changing fuel filters, just anything they've got questions about. Last night, I got a phone call from a client I've been working with in Knoxville, Tennessee, and he's got 2 30-amp shore power cables, and one of them's not working. So I talked him through how to test it and then change the wires from here to there to find out if the problem is the cable or if it's the boat. And we found out the problem was bigger than just something I could handle over FaceTime. So I referred him to an electrician that I know, and he's going to meet with him this morning and hopefully solve the problem. But FaceTime's a powerful tool. Seeing is believing.
Absolutely. And a lot of the times you've seen a lot more going on other people's boats than the owner has the luxury of just seeing his own boat. So you bring so much more knowledge to the table because of the fact that you've been on these different types of boats.
I was going to add one other thing is, in addition to that, it gives the person more confidence because if they know Captain Chris is a phone call away, it makes them less hesitant to go ahead and do the thing. They're not going to break anything, but they may wonder about something and they Google it and they can't find the answer. I mean, ask Captain Chris. That's really awesome. You guys are a phone call away.
Communication has gotten so much easier. We had somebody in the Bahamas and they use
About a month
they
ago.
use
Starlink.
Starlink, and it was better than our cell phones are sometimes in our own house. It was amazing how easily we could communicate with them and allay their fears. Because again, it's some of those things where if you've never been, if you don't know what to expect, it's a little fearful. My dad used to always say, all you need to do is swim on the top of the water. You don't need to worry how deep it is. But, it's still a mind game that gets played with you when you're over crossing in the tongue of the ocean, et cetera, et cetera. So it was kind of nice to be able to bring them down a few notches, let them see a little clearly, not have it be as stressful. But I mean, the Starlink that people have now is amazing.
Yeah.
This boater in particular, he's a checklist kind of guy. So we made an appointment for 2 days in the future, time and date. And I said, make your checklist.
Yeah.
So we were on FaceTime Starlink for 2 hours, and he was in Georgetown, Bahamas, and we're here in the USA.
With your expertise, how long does it usually take before a client fires you? I mean, here you're talking about seasonality that they'll call you back. I mean, literally, how long do you think it takes for someone to feel confident that they say, you know what, thanks, guys. I really appreciate your help, but I'm not going to be needing you anymore. Does that ever happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, that's what we hope happens.
Well, right? How long does that take? Is it years? Is it months? Is it weeks?
Oh, you mean to train somebody that just bought a
Yeah.
boat?
Yeah.
It depends upon the person, their background.
And what they're going to do with it. If they're going to go and stay coastal for a long time, then they can't get into too much trouble, providing they have towing insurance and a good radio and, form of communication and know how to anchor. That's always important too. But if they're going to go cruising around the world, well, that's something that I don't think somebody that just bought a boat should try to do in the first couple of weeks. We need to learn a lot more and build and get that confidence. But confidence happens when every day you're doing something similar and it becomes muscle memory, right? You don't even think about tying your shoe now, but try to teach it to a 3-year-old how to tie their shoe. I know everybody has Velcro now, but it's the idea that you don't even think about things that you do. You don't think about driving home from work in your car. You don't remember half of the trip when you get to your house because you just muscle memory. You knew there was a yellow light coming up and you knew you needed to stop. You didn't say, oh, now I must do this. But when you first start out on your boat, you're thinking about every little step. So practice makes a big difference. And when you encounter a storm the first time, you think, oh, this is awful. And the second time you think, this isn't such a bad storm. I can handle it. My boat can handle it. I know what to do. I know what not to do better, second time around, third time around. So it's a lot of that. You build your confidence and you don't need resources as quickly the more you practice at it. But the reality is we get phone calls from people from 4 years later. All of a sudden they'll say, I had this question. I didn't even know that I had this question, or I got a new something or other gadget, and I don't know how this is interacting. Is this interfering with my radio? Is this causing a problem? Is that the problem? So just sometimes picking up the phone and calling Chris happens no matter how long it is. I don't know that we've ever gotten actually fired, but
No.
I was teasing on the fired count. I was trying to be funny about getting fired. It's interesting though, the US Coast Guard, in order to get the credentials you have, they require 720 days at sea to get your 100-ton license.
Uh,
720 days.
well,
Yes.
360 days to get an inland license.
Correct.
And 720
Coastal.
to get a near coastal.
Right.
A near coastal is 200 miles offshore.
And
So there
yeah.
are two different levels, and then you've got the tonnage factor. But to answer your question a little bit more, 4 hours on the
'Cause-
boat underway makes 1 day.
Correct.
now
Yeah.
8 hours on one boat, one day is still one day. You can't,
Yeah.
you can fudge it, divide it up like that. But that is important. And that's what the Coast Guard is hoping for, is that all your time underway that you're able to document on your boat or other people's boats will then bring some of that experience to you and that confidence and that muscle memory, et cetera. And they also want to know that you've had no recordables, no issues, no, crashes, no problems.
And it's a reality check. I mean, you're spending a week or two with a couple on their boat to develop confidence. But you can say, hey, the US Coast Guard says proficiency is 360 days at least. And that's, not offshore waters. So I think it gives people a reference of 2 weeks with an expert being by my side all the time and gleaning as much as I can to this is what is required to have a license. So it's pretty cool, guys. Very cool.
Every 5 years, you got to do it again.
I just renewed mine. I had to fill out all those forms again. Easy because I live on my boat, but
We got married in 1984 and we're still boating. So
how many of those married years have you been on a boat?
we were 15 years. We had no land base, no storage unit, no car. 15 of those years. We lived aboard before and after where we had a land base, but we just, and we were only going to do it for a year. And then another year, and then another year. Yeah.
I wanted to touch on next the topic of choosing the right boat for you. Obviously, as yacht brokers, Amanda and our team, this is what we do. We support new buyers, whether they're looking for a new boat or a pre-owned boat. We call them new buyers. Are helping them make the right decision for their intended purpose. And that can take, as you know, many different shapes, whether they want to sail, whether they want to cruise, they want to do weekend trips or long distance and liveaboard dreams. All of those things, again, exist. And we're trying to help people in the best way that we can, which is to share our experiences, our knowledge, and tell people where to look. So now we're excited because we obviously have a resource to send them to when they also want to do, a pulse check on, hey, I'm thinking about this idea. Does that make sense to you? And what would my onboard training look like if we hired you, me and my wife say, to do on the wheel training? Now, you have created so many great videos on your YouTube channel. Is like a wealth of knowledge. It is so much. It's super exciting also. So we're happy to share this with our listeners so they can take a look at what is on your channel. Long-winded way to say you've created a lot of resources around how to choose the perfect boat for you as a cruiser. And I wanted to ask, what is your advice for someone who's just starting out and shopping for a boat? What do you tell them, or where do you send them to, again, do their due diligence and figure it out?
First of all, a corporate phrase is establish the mission. So, do you want a day boat, a weekend boat, a vacation boat, a cruising boat? Do you want to go fast? Do you want to go slow? The discussion of a single engine or two engines, that's an easy. Doesn't cost any more to operate a twin engine boat than it does a single engine boat. That's a fact. But comfort, one stateroom, two staterooms, one head, two heads, head for a shower or a shower stall. If anybody's listened to make a list of that, those are some of the things that you want to think about first. And then work with your broker, tell them what you think you want, and then your broker can point you in the direction of a couple of sample different boats. And then you can get more involved in that with the broker and with the online advertisements for those boats. Then the next step is to make an appointment with the broker to go step foot on the boat. And stepping foot on the boat means you go into the boat, make sure that it's tall enough, you got enough elbow room, lay down on the bed. Sounds strange, but lay down on the bed for the bigger people.
Get in the shower and wash your hair.
Again, elbow space. So you've got to figure all of those kind of things. But going back to establishing your mission, do you want to do the Great Loop for 6,000 miles for 1 year? Or do you just want a boat to put around with on weekends? Or do you want to go on a 1 week or 2 week vacation? We live in Vero Beach, so if you want to go up to St. Augustine, Florida, visit the oldest city in the USA, or if you want to go down to Miami, Biscayne Bay for the Columbus Day Regatta, or you want to go to the Keys or to the Bahamas. A lot of boats can do all of that, but some boats might have more desirable features to do that for a 1 week, 2 week, or a longer term. So it's a trial and error thing, but we want to get you pointed in the right direction, and then you got to pick out this or that.
And we also recommend that you find the broker that you're going to be able to work with, who's going to listen to you, who's going to understand what your needs are, so that when all of a sudden a boat comes up that wasn't on their list, but it meets all their needs, you can say, hey, I found this boat for you. And they're going to believe you and trust you. And, there's a great rapport. There are some brokers who are order takers. They sit in their office and they wait for you to come to them. And then there's others who will go out there and find the boat for you. And having had boating experience, whether it's from the manufacturing side of it or the Liveaboard side of it, you guys have a good leg up from some of these others who we've met.
Thank you.
We appreciate your compliment on that. And we do know there are a lot of good brokers out there that will listen to your needs and wants. But that brings up my other question. In your opinion, is there a question that buyers often mistake to ask, either the seller or of their broker? Is there one that you would say, hey, you know what? This is one you should remember?
There's so many different questions that we haven't even thought about yet. But the biggest issue I have is when a broker makes an appointment for a buyer to visit the boat, and sometimes the buyer will hire me to go visit the boat before they buy a plane ticket to go visit the boat.
Yes.
I'll go on the boat and I'll do FaceTime with them and I'll show them things. And maybe they don't need to buy a plane ticket to go visit the boat because they saw things that weren't online.
Or sometimes he'll say, here immediately, and if you can, make an offer even before you see the boat because it's so good. You don't want to lose it.
And that's a fact. I worked with a couple out of Wilmington, North Carolina. We're not making this stuff up. I'm just trying to remember. Wilmington, North Carolina, they looked at a DeFever 44 trawler, failed the survey. They looked at another one, failed the survey. So then they saw one online that was in Florida going to Charleston, and they asked me to go look at it. So I tried to go over to Fort Myers. They said, we'll be in Fort Pierce in a couple of days near my house. So I went on the boat in Fort Pierce, and I was just there for 30 minutes, and I called them up. I said, make them an offer. Now, I'm not in the broker side. I'm not in the money side. I'm in the consulting side where that boat was worthy of them making an offer. And so they made an offer on the boat, and the boat never made it to Charleston. They bought it in Jacksonville.
Wow.
And the sellers had to rent a U-Haul to get all their stuff off the boat.
And Amanda, can you explain to our listeners who may not be familiar with contingencies, what is the contingency that you would typically add when a boat is, sight unseen and there's an offer being presented?
Most common contingencies are survey, sea trial, mechanical inspection. When an offer is made sight unseen, I will also add a contingency of buyer's personal inspection. Now, like you said, boats are everywhere. And sometimes you do have to take a plane trip to find that perfect one that's just for you. And if you can have someone who is qualified go and visit that boat for you, whether it be your broker, whether it be someone like you guys, to go and do that first look. I mean, for me, the way a boat smells when you first walk into it, I give it the smell test, right? It's like, and then it's like within an instant, mold, or like head, or this has been sitting for a long time.
Or diesel. Yeah.
Or diesel. I honestly love the smell of diesel, but that's just me. I don't want the whole boat to reek like it, of course. But yes, there are certain smells that you just, until someone steps foot on the boat, you don't know. So it is worth its weight in gold.
And some of those smells are easy to fix.
Sure. Yeah. They're not deal breakers.
It's amazing to me how many people don't know that they do need to change their hoses from their heads. Yeah. All that.
And that, so you also need to take all your soft goods, your curtains, your seat cushions, your mattresses, put them out in the sun all day long so the UV can sanitize all of that. But going back to earlier, you talked about all the different stages of the survey, and you said mechanical survey. I want to touch on that. Very, very important to hire an engine surveyor independent of the general surveyor.
Yes.
And people think, well, the general surveyor can take the oil samples and send them off. Yes, he can. But the general surveyor doesn't live and breathe with that engine for his entire career. So you can look at an engine. I was FaceTiming a couple of days ago with an engine that's smoking out of the air intake. And you think, why is smoking coming out of the air intake? Something's wrong. Another engine was running a little hot. A different boat, an engine, the oil pressure was up to around 90 when it should only be 40. You need a proper engine surveyor in addition to the hull surveyor.
Yeah, that's super important.
And you also need to be prepared. This is really hard. I tell people, do not fall in love with your boat until after you've signed the check. You need to be able to walk away from a bad survey, and that, few people that have done that will boldly stand up and admit it and say, and it was the best thing I ever did. Because if I had hung on to that boat, it would have been a money pit that I didn't even realize how much. So not all failed surveys are total failures, but for some reasons, you need to be able to walk away from it.
Call it education tuition.
Yes.
Yes.
We've talked about this before with Amanda. That the number one thing you want to avoid if you can, whether you call Chris and he can go look at a boat for you, but a lot of the time, by even reviewing the listing properly and asking the right questions from the listing broker, we will save you the trouble of traveling far to go see a boat. And by looking at it closely when we're together, we ensure that you're not going to take this boat to survey if we suspect already there's some major issues that that buyer will not want to deal with. So again, it's to your point, Chris, asking the right questions. What kind of boat do you want? Are you willing to do a little work? No, you want a pristine boat? Okay, well, this may not be the boat for you. We try to get ahead of it. There's no need to pay for that tuition on many boats. Now, you could have a survey that didn't turn out the way you thought it would, and that's going to happen. It's really unavoidable, especially things under the waterline, right? Amanda, this happens pretty commonly, and you just got to deal with that level of risk. Do you want to take this project on or not? And are you ready to move on? I had another question because I think what you hit on, Chris, as far as the mechanical inspection or the engine inspection, very specifically, what other things have you seen buyers do completely wrong post survey or during survey? What are some of the findings and lessons learned that you could share with us? I'm sure you got great stories, but could you pick one and tell us?
If they've had a mechanical survey, one of the things that bothers me is on a twin engine boat, if you're doing the survey, the mechanical survey, and let's say the starboard engine's running a little hot, so the surveyor will pull back on the throttles and it cools off. That's good. You don't want to damage the engine. So they'll write into the survey, starboard engine ran a little hot, have it checked. I've got an answer for that. But I've got another question first. If you've got twin engines, and one runs a little hot, the other one's going to do the same thing. So that might mean that your heat exchangers are fouled. Amanda, you're talking about your air conditioning condenser is fouled with barnacles. So the heat exchanger on the cooling of the engine might be fouled. So if it's fouled on the starboard engine, it is going to be fouled on the port engine also. It's just that it showed up earlier on the starboard. So now when you get into the negotiating phase of the surveyor said, have this looked at, and then the buyer will either discount or have it looked at, but he won't do anything on the other engine because it never surveyed as overheating. But they're twin engines, so do them both. Do the maintenance on both of them. So that's one of the bigger deals.
Another simple thing is surveyors will write electronics powered up.
Oh, I hate that.
Powered
Yeah.
up. What does that mean?
Powered up.
It's so
Right.
easy to turn on radar and see, is it seeing anything? You can be right in the marina and still see, is the radar working or not? Oh, it powered up. That's all they tell you. And then you come to the boat and you find out that the screen is ruined or it's not functioning properly. And you say, well, why didn't this? Well, I told you it powered up. That's all it did.
And they do the same thing on the marine radio. Technically, with the FCC, it's against the law to do a radio check on channel 16. That's fact. But you can call the marine and say, how much is fuel today?
And they'll switch you to a new channel. And now you've checked your radio.
So you've done a radio check without announcing you're doing a radio check.
Or to take all the anchor chain out.
Oh, that's something else. They only put out about 10 feet and then bring it back in. So if you got 300 feet of chain and you know that you only use about a half of that chain, so the other half stays down there for 10 or 15 years, it's rusted into a big old clump and it's a mess. Surveyors, most of the surveyors do not deploy 100% of the anchor rode or the anchor chain.
Or if the boat comes with a great dinghy. I mean, dinghies can be
expensive.
And they also come in varied sizes and speeds and comfort levels, and they never lower the dinghy and they never try to run the dinghy. And you think, well, that's part of the deal. You're selling this boat with part of it, and they'll say, well, we don't do that.
Well,
yeah, you do.
What in our pet peeve with the dinghies is I want to lower the dinghy to prove that the davit works. I want to put it in the water. I don't need to go anywhere, but I want to put it in the water and make sure that the motor starts, and then hopefully run a circle around the boat and then lift it back up. And then a lot of surveyors will say, well, that's not part of the survey. And you say, but it's part of the purchase and it's part of my insurance policy. So if you've got a dinghy with the 20 horsepower on it and you need to put it in the shop, it might be in there for 2 or 3 weeks and it might cost you $1,000 or $3,000 or a new motor.
So even if you've got this contingency amount of money, it's your time. And now I'm excited. I've got this new boat. I want to go play with my new boat, and I can't play with it for XYZ reasons. And these are the kind of things that if you knew about it in advance and you accepted it, that's one thing. But if you didn't even know about it, then that shatters some of that dream that you had.
Absolutely. This is now officially my favorite question. In fact, if you have more questions for Captain Chris and Alyse, put your comments below as you're watching this. We'll probably do a round 2 with these two because this is just so fun and so important. I mean, Amanda, there's so much more we could dig into. We're not going to do this in this particular episode. I mean, this is gold. Love it.
A lot of the times people will ask about surveyors and what they will do. And we'll say, call a few surveyors and actually ask them if they're willing to go up the rig, if they're willing to check the dinghy. I agree with you. Are they willing to pull out all of the anchor chain? And maybe this is something that you use to decide, I'm going to choose this surveyor over this one, depending on how they answer those questions. So that's a really good insight you're offering there, because I've seen this on surveys. Most surveyors will not do those things. So good insight.
We have a pretty long PDF on what to expect of a marine survey. So if you've never gone through a survey before, this is a good primer to at least coach you on the kind of things that should be looked at. And all people have to do is send us an email and we'll send them that PDF so that they can learn, because it's free. And it's got a lot of photos too to look at. And it's certainly not teaching you how to be a surveyor. You'd be a better boat buyer, to look at a boat with a keener eye, to be more open to the possibilities and such. And one of those things is we suggest that you ask any prospective surveyors for a sample copy of their work.
Yes. Yep.
Many of them will give it to you. Some of them won't. They get really defensive about it, but some of them will give it to you so that you can see what do they offer. It may be a completely different kind of boat than you are looking at, but you at least can get a flavor for what you get. Now, we are still seeing some surveyors today, which shocks me in this day of digital everything, that will not provide photographs for you. And I think that's insane, that there will be no photographs on a survey. That's the easiest thing. You don't even have to print it out anymore. You used to have to print out a survey and mail it to somebody, etc. Now everything's online, so it's so cheap and easy to do something like that. But the more questions you ask of your surveyor, just like the questions you want to ask of your broker, what are you offering me? We really encourage people to get a broker, not to do a FSBO, not to do a for sale by owner, because there's too many things you know about that, even as many times as we bought boats and we've been involved in stuff, there's things that I don't know about. So I'm going to use a broker because there's expertise that you bring to the table that people don't know. They don't know.
If we've got time, I've got 2 more things I'd like to add.
Go for it.
Okay. If you're buying a sailboat, get a sailboat surveyor. If you're buying a sport fishing boat, get a sport fishing surveyor. If you're buying a boat in between those two, then a general surveyor can pretty much handle it. But you want a specialist in the sailboat category or in the high-speed, high-horsepower sport fishing boat. And the other thing, we monitor a lot of forums online. And the last couple of weeks, there's a big question about wide open throttle, WOT. So some people with older boats are afraid to run their older diesel engines at wide open throttle for a survey because they think it might fail or blow up. So they just plain old refuse to do that. So we tell people, ask, when we go to survey, are we going to do wide open throttle survey? And if they say no, walk. Don't even start the survey. We sold our boat. It was an older boat. It was a 1980 boat. We did wide open throttle tests and our engines passed fine with 6,000 hours on them. I did all the maintenance, so I trusted the engines and they did fine. But other people run their boats at maybe 1,200 or 1,400 RPM for 2,000 and 3,000 hours. And that's technically damaging the engine. And if you do a wide open throttle test, then that damage might show up. So be aware, ask if they agree to do a wide open throttle test. The seller agreed to do that.
Good tip.
Very good. That's all really good advice. What do you see long-term transient cruisers, liveaboards, use as a service for their mail when they no longer have a home address? What do you suggest your clients use or your fellow cruising friends? What do they use?
It's a mailing service different than a post office box. The federal government will not allow you to use a POB as a residence for voters or for driver's license. But you can get a PMB, personal mailbox, and then you can use that as your personal residence for voting, driver's license, insurance. And a lot of states, not a lot, but a few states, Florida, Tennessee, Texas, and one of the Midwest states are zero state income tax. So that's where those personal mailbox companies are. One of them here in Florida, up near Jacksonville, Green Cove Springs, is, I can't remember, St. Brendan's Isle. St. Brendan's Isle offers a service where all of your mail goes there. Then they have different programs or packages where they can either open it for you, or they can scan the envelope and decide what to do with it, or they can bundle it up and send it to your next destination 3 or 5 days down the road.
Okay, really cool. And are you guys still living aboard today?
Nope, we bought a dirt house. We're called Clods, cruisers living on dirt.
If I can ask you one last question, from all of your years on the water and teaching others, what's the single biggest thing that you believe separates those who actually go on and cruise the world or the Great Loop from those who turn around after a week on the water?
Confidence, comfort, and desire. I didn't think about those words before, but confidence, comfort, and desire to do it.
Absolutely.
Alyse?
There's a bit of adventure to it, whether it's just being adventurous to leave your dock. I mean, that's a big adventure for some people. You see many dock queens that just stick around at the dock and they go every weekend and party and have a good time. And that's fine if that's what all you want to do with your boat. But if you want to do more, I will tell you that it was very, very helpful for my level of comfort that I knew Chris knew a lot more than I did. But if I really wanted to learn more, and as time went on, I realized I had to learn more in order to be comfortable. And that sounds crazy. Sometimes ignorance is bliss, but sometimes it's not. And just learning some of the basic things, anybody can learn it if you want to. That's the whole thing. Anybody can learn it. Chris can teach anything to anybody. And if he doesn't understand how something works, he researches it himself, or he knows who to call and do the questions so that he's more of a confident teacher to teach them. And yet you sometimes have people that I see this with couples, not as much as I used to, but I see this with couples where one will say, I got the inside of the boat, I got the galley, I got the provisionings, and he's got everything else. And if that works for you, and if you have a budget to deal with that, that's fine. But if you don't, or if that's not your comfort level, because sometimes on the 4th of July is when your air conditioning quits in Florida, or in the Chesapeake when it's, a record high of 100 degrees or something, right? You want to have that air conditioning works. And then you find out after you got somebody, if you're lucky, to come out on the 4th of July, you're paying them an exorbitant rate because it's a holiday. And then you see how easy it was. It was not hard for them to fix it. So you think, well, shoot, I could have done that. And that's what I try to get people to learn, is that if you want to learn, if there's a desire there to learn, you can learn it. And then there's so many ways that you can learn it. Certainly we can be one of those ways, but there's lots of ways that you can learn to do it and build that confidence. And then practice when it's not the weekend, practice when the weather is perfect, practice when you don't have visitors aboard, when there's nobody looking, you're not the show to watch. Practice so that you get comfortable and this stays fun and pleasurable for you as you're doing your adventure, whatever your adventure is, whatever level that adventure is.
Great advice. Absolutely.
Chris and Alyse, thank you so much for sharing your insights today and for your time. I'm certain our listeners have found terrific amount of knowledge packed in this episode today. So we've added Captain Chris services in our marine directory, and I'll put the link below. And this is where you can also email Chris and Alyse and ask them about the overview of what to expect on a survey day, which I hear is a very complete guide. And if you'd like to get a copy, Captain Chris and Alyse can send that to you. We hope to have you back for part 2. If you have any questions for Chris, Alyse, please post them below. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time. Fair winds.
Fair winds,
Beautiful.
guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.